Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all of the praises and the glory to the Most High and His Son, Yahweh Bashmiel Shah Bashumar Rakak Wadash, and double honors to the elder apostles of the great millstone that have taught us this truth through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashmiel Shai and Yahweh Bashmiel Shai Brakatham, to the sincere believers, whom is 144,000, and as well as even including those of the 1/3. And it's your brother Laban. And what I want to get into is a couple of things that I've stumbled on. And by the Spirit, I stumbled upon this. And then eventually, before this came in to my eyes, I was watching this. And it just blew my mind. Because it's like, I was watching this first. And I never ever thought of this video. This was the second video that came, to me on the on my feed. And well, actually, you know what? Excuse me. I was watching this video first, and then all of a sudden, this woman, she pops up, and I didn't even know she was going to even speak about Alabama. So I was watching this first. All right. So anyway, what I found out was the ultimate reason why the prison industrial complexes make a lot of money as they do, and using poor people in this case. First and foremost, through rap, of course, as I can now recount in my mind that this rapper that came on, I think he was on some radio station or something like that, and he exposed that back in the early 90s, which makes a lot of sense because in 1990 to 1991 you had the gangster rap that came in, right? Now back in the 90s, you've always had hip hop music here and there, but most of the music that was pop in the 80s was soul and things of that nature, R&B type stuff like that. And then all of a sudden rap becomes prominent in like 89, 90. And then all of a sudden, 91, you got this gangster rap. And I'm thinking about the rapper now. What's his name, man? I forgot the guy's name, but he's a part of the Bone Thugs and Harmony crew. I think his name is Lazy Bone, right? One of them guys anyway. So he revealed that the real reason why they wanted to gangsterize music that he was already making is so that obviously the majority of our people can end up in prison. And right around that time, as soon as they brought that music in, throughout the months, there was like evidence being pulled out and saying that you had more so-called black men in prison than you did in South Africa, something to that equivalent. And I'm thinking about that one song that was aired out, and it was this prison song. And of course, the song was about letting so-called young black men know that, look, you don't want to end up in jail. And this song was aired out around the early 90s. And, I can tell it was obviously based in New York City, right? And when I find, Lord willing, if I could find the video, I'll put it on post-production, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's an old school record that came out in like maybe 90 or 91. And he was basically letting you know that you don't want to end up in jail. Okay? And at the end of the song, they were showing you how many black men were locked up in the in the penitentiary at that time, because it is music. You see, first and foremost, you had NWA, you had Ice Cube, guys like that. In the West Coast, I think at the time the West Coast was more prominent. New York rap was always in effect in that time too, but primarily the West Coast rap hit the scene more impactfully. All right? Until it became a trend, that kind of music. And she even spoke about, even in the state of Alabama in 1898, as this reads, nearly 3/4 of Alabama's total state revenue came directly from this institution. Convict leasing, it's called, right? And it's no different than what they do to the prisoners today. Okay? They found out that the prison business is basically big business. It's big money in this. When you really analyze the society in totality, right? This society makes money, makes profit on the ill health of people. People struggle, primarily the poor of our nation, our people especially. It's how this society thrives when we're at our disadvantage. All right. And that's how the system was basically built. It was built for you to suffer and for the very few that at the very top of this economy to prosper. All right. And since that I've said that, let me go pull this scripture out. Yeah, this is Psalm 73 and verse 12. Behold, these are the ungodly who prosper in the world, and they increase in riches. And that's these devils at the very top. They're the ungodly. The Edomites primarily, they are the people that represents the wicked. And they're pretty much at the top of everything where it concerns America and everything, right? And the ultimate reason why they prosper is because they use the media, they use medicine, so-called, to make sure you're at a disadvantage. And that's how they ultimately prosper. All right. So what I want to do is I want to hit the original scriptures that I have on deck over here. As this reads in the book of Deuteronomy 28 and verse 50. A nation of fierce countenance which shall not regard the person of old, nor show favor to the young. And they've already expressed that in slavery days and after slavery. All right. There's so many evidence. There's so much historical evidence which shows that back in those days, after slavery was, abolished, have you will, our people were getting jumped, beaten up like none other, being blamed for things that they did not do, were wrongfully accused of a crime they didn't commit, and they were executed because of this. People were being told that there's going to be a scene of a Negro. There's going to be a Negro which will be lynched today, and everybody would get together. And mind you, just to mention as well, these would be white Christians, white so-called Christians that would then claim today in telling you that you should come to their religion and believe in Jesus Christ as your Lord and your Savior. And these are the same crackers back then that would come around and watch you get lynched, right? And some of them would tell you that they going nigger hunting. That was an actual thing back in the day in the States. You would have these low, dirty, washed up crackers that would have it in their mind to go hunt just some random Negro if he was found in a place that he didn't deserve to be in. This was the mind frame in America back after the days of slavery. We talking about the 1930s, the 40s, the 50s, and if I missed the 20s, let me include that as well. That was the mentality back then. All right, Jake had zero zilch rights. Jake was not considered a human being. All right, and this woman, she goes into that, and this woman touches on a lot of beautiful points, man, and showing you how Jake was just put in a very damning situation, as we will never forget. All right, we used to talk about this stuff quite a bit years ago, but we've kind of drawn back from that because that's not really what the spirit is on right now. But at the end of the day, no matter what era we're in, we'll never forget about how we was ill-treated by these devils. We'll never forget about that. Okay? Because when I was coming into this truth, man, I remember the elder apostles and the brothers and the bishops, they used to speak about this kind of stuff on a regular. You know, now that spirit ain't so anymore. But maybe we need to start bringing this spirit back, man, and start talking about how Jake used to be treated in America, man, to really showcase why we are gonna do these devils dreadfully when we get our hands on them. When Yahweh Shai makes a second return, when we rule over them, we're gonna do them just as bad as they did us. We're gonna do them just as bad as they have done us, and if not, probably 1,000 times worse. All right. But what we won't do is we're not going to do the sadistic things that they have done to our people. We're going to deal with them according to the law, lawfully. What they've been doing is they've been using our people for ages for their own personal financial gain, right? And every state has been doing this. You know, that's how the various states in America, or the government in general, makes their money. They make their money on Jake being at a disadvantaged situation. All right. And yes, it's about race, but also it's about keeping you at the working class sect. And therefore you'll be in need. And when you're in need, you'll sell your soul to go become this rapper. And therefore, as this rapper that is in need to get out the projects, right? Or that is in need because because you were raised in this environment, and because you were raised in a broken household, which originally that's what it's really all about, really, because you could be raised in the projects, but if you got two decent minded parents, then you good. You could be anywhere as long as you got good family backing you good, right? But a lot of these jakes come from broken homes, which leads to a broken mind. And when you grow up with that broken mind, you express which is of that broken mind. So now, like I was saying, let's just say you're a broken-minded Jake and you go get a record deal. Guess what? You're going to rap about some bullshit because that's all you ever known. And they use your sickness to contaminate the whole race and then call it black culture. And then they normalize what these rappers have been saying to you, and then you take it up as it's a trend. When in all reality, you've been pretty much hypnotized by being desensitized to this stuff. You've been trained mentally to adopt the behaviors that this individual on this rap video, or even it could be by your friends that's also adopting this way of life. And then all of a sudden you join into this way of life because now you think it's normal. All right. So that's just the thing. You know, you always need poor people in this society because that way you can manipulate them however you want to be. And they'll be willing to sell their soul because why? They're the needy. When you're in a needy situation, half of the times people do what they got to do to get out of those situations. People do what they got to do to get out of those situations. Right? So if you're coming from a broken home situation where you wasn't taught a thing or two about integrity, self-respect, self-dignity, guess what? You're going to do anything that it takes to get out of where you're coming from. And then guess what? You can use these poor people as your own puppets, as the so-called JOO issues have been doing to our people, using them as puppets to destroy our people, especially the young among our people, primarily. All right? And as well as just to keep, of course, these regular white folks in somewhat of a disadvantage, because if you have Jake that does something silly, everybody's going to follow the trend. And in that way, the powers that be can have full control over your minds because you're mentally sick due to the programming that they've given you. Okay? It's all systematic, man. So, I've said a mouthful there. Let me read this again, man, so I can recap my train of thought. A nation of fierce countenance, which should not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. And I mean, we have a plethora of cases. One case over here with this lad over here, the George Stinney case. He was accused of killing two young white girls, baby white girls or something like that. And they executed them at the age of 14 years old. and it came out that he didn't even touch them girls the way they said that, the way that they said that he did. That was a lie. So they executed this guy, and that's just what it was. This was in 1943, I think it was 42 or 43, and this was post-slavery because they like to make out, oh well, you know, we've let you loose from slavery, so now everything's all good. Jake was getting it worse than they was getting it in slavery, or I would even go as far as the same. Jake was still getting the same treatment as they did when they were in slavery, out of slavery. Oh, we have another case, Emmett Till. And what I did with this over here, I had to go doing some research to go get this because Google used to easily have this on the Google images to be seen. This was easily accessible on Google, but I had to do some searching, and the reason why they ain't putting this out here, but they just showing the boy's face over here, because this looks really bad, man. This is a terrible look, and the real reason why that's the case because they're ashamed of it, man, and so should they be ashamed of what they've done. All right, they should be ashamed of it. So let's get into another case over here, right? So as this reads, as American as the blues, lynching in the film and TV. So as you can see here, this might have been in the 1940s or 50s or something like that, because you still have people in the South dressing like this, man. You know, because they believe that our people at the time believed that they were still in slavery. They were so traumatized, and they believed that they were still slaves. So they were chattel slaves at this particular point in time, right? And as you can see this black woman over here that's clutching her son, her young little son, for his dear life, and you can see that they're trying to grab his son to lynch him. This is how it used to be. For those of you that are not privy to this, our people were not even considered human beings, man. And that's why these devils were able to do what they did. But even though they did what they did, you can tell that they felt a bit bad about it afterwards. But at the end of the day, the narrative that was proposed at this time is that so-called blacks were not even human, so you could just do whatever the fuck you want. In this time, black women were heavily raped. You already know that. Whatever they found a so-called Negro, they would hunt them down. Like I mentioned earlier before, you had a thing called, as they would say among themselves, we gonna go nigger hunting, right? Because Jake was, as you've heard before, the term 3/5 of a man. So you was less human than they were. All right. You weren't even a man. You were a lesser man or a lesser human being than the whites at the time. And these were, again, Christians. Just to keep that in mind. So whenever you watch Vocab Alone telling you about Christianity or whatever the hell he's talking about, that's who these people were. But yet you got Vocab Alone that will make us look like, oh yeah, we're the worst thing next to Satan himself. When in fact, the Hebrew Israelites didn't lynch or light anybody on fire or homes on fire, but they did. All right. There's a picture as well, man, where there's this Jake on the ground and he's burning, man. And they all standing there looking to get their pictures and shit and everything. And, I was watching this right here and she had the picture on it. So that's why I mentioned it. Right. But man, I tell you, there was so much harm that was done to so-called black people in those days. And I'm talking about post-slavery. All right. This wasn't done in slavery. This was post-slavery. Post-slavery. All of the lynchings from the 1950s, I think, from those times, of course, from post-slavery times on towards even into the 60s, they was lynching Jake. Okay. And as of recently too, just to include, there was a particular Jake that was found in the wrong place and he got lynched. That bitter spirit, which is America, that's that bitter spirit that America always had, has never left America. All right? Especially among our people. I mean, it was hella bitter to our people, man. Anyway, let's read some more scriptures. Job 24 and verse 9. They pluck the fatherless from the breast and take the pledge from the poor. And they cause them to go naked without clothing. And they take away the sheep from the hungry. And this is figurative, meaning that when our people encountered the enemy, after them cargo slave ships we left, they made sure that they took our nationality from us. So we didn't have our way at all. Our way was ripped away from us. Our way was ripped from us so that we can be considered slaves, or let's just say slaves to the corporation. And in that, we learn a different way of life rather than the way of life that our ancestors taught us. And they take away the sheep from the hungry, which make oil within their walls, and tread their wine presses and suffer thirst. Men groan from out of the city, and the soul of the wounded crieth out. Yet the Most High layeth not folly to them. Why? Because the Lord is hearing the voices of the poor. Psalms 12 and verse 5. For the oppression of the poor, and who is the poor in this case? Our people primarily, because we're the poorest economically in this Western world. Ever since the 1600s, we've been in the same economic position since those centuries. So we're talking about almost pushing 500 years. All right? What makes a nation poor is the fact that they don't own the land that they stand on. They don't own most of the real estate. And they don't own a plethora of enough businesses to take care of their own people. So if you don't own these three things, which are very important and vital to a nation, you are considered the poor and the vulnerable. So now, because you don't own these things, now you have to go and get it from those that own it. You have to go get a job because you don't own a job to hire other people of your own people, your own race. Let me say that better. So you got to go and get it from your enemies, because your enemies run all of the industries. Your enemy runs the government. Your enemy covers all gaps of your environment where it concerns ownership. So all you are is just a slave on their property, a slave in their house, their economy. For the sighing of the needy, now will I arise, save the Lord, and I will set him in safety from him that puffeth at him. And all of this came down upon our people because of our sins. That's the ultimate reason why all of this happened to us, and why we're still going through these traumatic experiences in America today and elsewhere.